Imagine Karachi on a sweltering summer day. You know the kind where the air itself just feels heavy, maybe temperatures are climbing past 45 degrees Celsius. But here's the thing, this isn't just an unusually hot day anymore, is it? It feels more like, well, a grim new normal. Your fan might sputter, the air conditioner gives out, and then that hum of generators outside, it just falls silent because the grid, which is already pretty fragile, it just buckles under the strain. For millions, I mean, this isn't just something you read about, it's a daily grinding struggle. It's the lived reality of a climate emergency that's unfolding right now. Here in Pakistan, we are living through this right now. Whether it's that unprecedented heat gripping our cities, or the sudden just devastating floods that sweep through communities, or even just the increasing unpredictability of our weather patterns, the ones we used to rely on. Climate change isn't some distant threat we talk about in faraway conferences. It's our present reality. It's here. It's now. And for many of you listening, especially if you're in a place like Karachi, it's probably a tangible daily experience that's reshaping your life. And what's really striking and frankly quite unjust when you really start to unpack it is this unique paradox Pakistan faces. Here we are, one of the most climate vulnerable countries on the planet, globally speaking, yet we're a minimal, almost negligible contributor to the global emissions causing it. We're talking less than 1% of the world's carbon footprint. Yet somehow we bear this completely outsized burden of climate disaster. It sets up this crucial point of, well, profound injustice that really defines the global climate conversation. And it's something we absolutely need to explore in this deep dive. I mean, what does it fundamentally tell us about the global system when a country contributing so little faces such disproportionate impacts? Is it a failure of responsibility, or maybe a deeply ingrained inequity in, global development models?
That's precisely the core of it. And what's critical to understand, I think, is that this isn't just an environmental issue. Many people might initially see it that way, confined to forests or polar ice caps, right? But it rapidly expands. It becomes this multifaceted crisis. A humanitarian emergency, yes, but also an economic catastrophe, and a profound social upheaval that impacts every single facet of life and society. So effective solutions, they can't just be siloed into environmental ministries. They have to be holistic. They need to touch on public health, critical infrastructure, the very livelihoods of millions, and even, the intricate social structures holding our communities together. The interconnectedness is, well, it's truly staggering when you look closely.
And the urgency couldn't be clearer right now, could it? We've seen it with the recent heat waves gripping our cities, turning, the daily commute into an endurance test. We're right in the middle of ongoing concerns about the monsoon season. A slight shift. And it's the difference between life-giving rain and, well, catastrophic floods. And on the global stage, those vital discussions around climate finance, especially loss and damage, they're not abstract policy debates anymore. They're immediate, tangible concerns affecting millions right here. So our mission for this deep dive today is really to offer you a shortcut. A way to get truly well-informed on a topic that defines our present and, let's face it, shapes our future, especially here in Pakistan. We're going to unpack the undeniable signs, the compelling data points that confirm Pakistan's extreme vulnerability. We'll really dig into that. Then we'll explore the profound human, economic, and social costs, the burdens already being borne by millions across the country. And from there, we'll pivot. We'll look at what concrete steps are actually being taken, both at national and international levels, to grapple with this immense challenge.
And, perhaps most importantly, we'll look forward. We need to explore the clear pathways to resilience. This means moving beyond just, understanding the problem. We need to actively explore what can be done. We want to help you, our listener, understand the actionable insights, the practical strategies that can be implemented to build a more resilient Pakistan in the face of these, frankly, ever-growing challenges. It's really about moving from a position of acute vulnerability towards one of adaptive strength, outlining how we can collectively build a future that's not only sustainable, but also secure.
All right, let's unpack this then. Let's dive right into the alarming reality. When we talk about Pakistan being on the front lines of climate change, what does front lines truly mean? In terms of daily life and maybe the long-term prognosis. Can you help us understand the undeniable signs, the data points confirming this extreme vulnerability? For those of you living here, I suspect many of these signs are already visible, already impacting your daily lives in pretty profound ways.
Absolutely. And we're not talking about abstract climate models predicting scenarios decades from now. No, we're talking about present-day impacts that are already causing significant disruption, suffering, and loss right now. The evidence is, well, it's overwhelming. And it's been accumulating for years, escalating dramatically just in the last few. The scientific consensus is robust, consistently reinforcing that Pakistan is experiencing the sharp end of global climate change.
Okay, let's start with extreme heat waves, because these aren't just unusually hot summers anymore where you might, complain about the AC bill. These are record-breaking temperatures becoming more frequent and more intense across the whole country. We've seen cities, especially in Sindh and Punjab, regularly hitting a scorching 45, 50 degrees Celsius, sometimes even higher. Think about Jankababad, for instance. It's already known for harsh summers, right? But temperatures there have repeatedly edged towards 52 degrees Celsius. That's pushing the very limits of human survivability.
And what's critical to understand here is how these temperatures aren't just one-off spikes. They're part of a discernible, accelerating long-term trend. It's becoming a new normal, the human impact. It's immediate and severe. Rampant heat stroke cases overwhelm hospitals, pushing healthcare infrastructure to its absolute limits, particularly in areas with fewer resources. And beyond that immediate health crisis, these extreme temperatures put an unbearable strain on the national energy grid. That leads to widespread power outages, load shedding, crippling daily life and economic activity. I mean, can you imagine trying to work or study or simply exist in that kind of heat without electricity? Often for 12, sometimes 18 hours a day. It's not just uncomfortable, it becomes a fundamental obstacle to productivity, health, and frankly, dignity.
So while extreme heat puts this immense pressure on urban life, paradoxically, the same climate shifts are bringing the opposite extreme: devastating floods. And here's where the scale of the challenge becomes just incredibly stark and tragic. The sheer scale of the 2022 floods, for instance, that really opened eyes globally to what climate change can unleash. We're talking about a disaster that submerged a third of the country, a third. It displaced millions, affected an estimated 33 million people. That's roughly 1 in 7 Pakistanis. It was just a stark, tragic example of climate devastation on an unprecedented scale.
And it's crucial to recognize it's not just singular catastrophic events like 2022, devastating as they were. We're observing recurring patterns, flash floods, particularly in mountainous and arid regions, catching communities completely off guard. Urban flooding is also a chronic, debilitating issue. Mega cities like Karachi experience repeated deluges during monsoon season. They paralyze infrastructure, bring life to a standstill, and cost the city billions, literally billions, in lost productivity and damage every single year. And then, in the northern regions, there's the threat of glacial lake outburst floods, or GLOFs, that looms large. What makes GLOFs so uniquely terrifying is the sheer volume of water and debris unleashed in an instant. Imagine a massive lake forming behind a natural dam of ice and, well, loose moraine, basically compacted dirt and rocks, not solid rock. As glaciers melt faster due to rising temperatures, the lake swells rapidly, eroding that unstable dam until, boom, it suddenly collapses. We've seen an alarming increase in these events, communities caught entirely off guard. It just illustrates the volatile nature of our rapidly changing cryosphere, the frozen parts of our planet. And recent news, well, it's repeatedly highlighted heavy rains and associated casualties, reminding us this isn't a problem of the past. It's an ongoing deadly reality people are living with.
Which brings us to the changing monsoon patterns themselves. They're becoming incredibly unpredictable. It really is this feast or famine situation with water, isn't it? We either get these incredibly intense, short bursts of rain that lead to immediate, overwhelming flooding way more than our drainage systems can handle, or you get prolonged droughts in other areas, leaving land parched, crops withered, communities just desperate for water. It's this extreme variability that makes any kind of planning so difficult.
Exactly. And when we connect this to the bigger picture, this unpredictability has profound hydrological impacts. It fundamentally disrupts established agricultural cycles. It strains existing water storage and distribution systems. It makes it incredibly difficult for farmers and even urban planners to anticipate water availability and manage resources effectively. The traditional, reliable rhythm of the seasons. It's been thrown into complete disarray. And that leads to severe consequences for everything, from managing our dams and reservoirs to ensuring enough water for drinking and irrigation.
And this unpredictability feeds directly into, well, the long-term, maybe even existential threat of water scarcity. We're seeing accelerated glacier melt in the Himalayas and Karakoram. Paradoxically, that initially increases river flows for a bit, but then it leads to a significant, irreversible reduction in the long run as those glaciers diminish. That, coupled with altered river flows from changing monsoons and rapid, unsustainable groundwater depletion, it poses an immense threat, a threat to the very survival of communities and our economy.
You know, when we talk about water being life in Pakistan, it's not hyperbole. Did you know the Indus River system, fed primarily by glacial melt and monsoon rains, supports over 90% of our agriculture? 90%. But projections show we could lose a significant portion of that glacial volume in the coming decades. Decades, not centuries. This could turn our current water stress into a critical shortage. It could displace millions, redraw our agricultural map entirely. It's a truly profound and, frankly, terrifying shift. And this isn't just about having less water for agriculture. It's about the very foundation of food security, public health, urban sustainability being eroded, the sustainability of major cities, the entire economy. It hinges on addressing this looming water crisis.
And all these changes inevitably have a direct and devastating impact on agriculture and food security, which, as we know, is the backbone of our economy. We're seeing massive crop losses, reduced yields, even increased pest infestations because of these extreme weather events, floods washing away fields, heat waves scorching produce, droughts making land infertile.
Agriculture is absolutely the backbone. It employs nearly 40% of the labor force, contributes substantially to GDP. When this sector gets hit, it doesn't just mean food prices go up for you, the consumer, though that's a huge consequence. It means millions of livelihoods are jeopardized. It pushes vulnerable populations further into poverty, directly affecting food security for the entire nation. The ripple effect is profound. It impacts everything from rural migration patterns and food inflation to urban stability and national export earnings. The damage to agriculture for the 2022 floods alone, estimated at over $12 billion, a catastrophic blow.
And it's important to stress this isn't just anecdotal evidence or local observations we're sharing. This alarming reality is reinforced by robust scientific consensus. Global reports, like those from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they consistently highlight Pakistan's extreme vulnerability, often citing it as one of the top 10 most affected countries globally. And local climate research, conducted right here by Pakistani scientists and institutions, further validates these findings. It provides granular data on regional impacts and future projections.
Yes, and these reports are crucial. They provide the indisputable scientific backing. They move the discussion beyond mere observation to a point of, well, undeniable fact. They underscore that what Pakistan is experiencing isn't isolated incidents. It's part of a larger systemic global phenomenon driven by human-induced climate change. They give us those critical data points that should inform policy and prompt action.
So what does this all mean for us? Beyond the daily news headlines, beyond the scientific reports, what does this relentless onslaught of climate impacts mean for the people of Pakistan, for our fragile economy, for the very fabric of society itself? The costs are clearly multifaceted, profoundly human, economic, and social. It's a complex web of consequences that touches every single life.
And this is where the statistics translate into real-world suffering. Immense challenges for recovery, for future planning. It's the human element, isn't it? The individual stories of loss, of resilience, that truly provide the urgency and depth of this crisis. These aren't just numbers on a page. They represent shattered lives, displaced communities.
Beyond the statistics, then, what does this crisis mean for everyday Pakistanis? The humanitarian crisis is perhaps the most immediate, the most harrowing consequence: mass displacement. It's a stark reality we've witnessed on an unprecedented scale. Millions of people displaced by floods, transformed into internal refugees within their own country, often, literally overnight.
And the challenges these displaced communities face are immense, tragically multifaceted. They lose their homes, their land, their entire livelihoods, their fundamental sense of stability, all gone. Many are forced into temporary camps, makeshift shelters. Conditions are often dire: inadequate shelter, sanitation, access to basic necessities like clean water and food. Which raises an important question, doesn't it? How does climate change impact public health infrastructure? Especially when that infrastructure is already strained by existing burdens and, let's be honest, often limited resources.
It impacts it dramatically, often devastatingly. We see a significant rise in health crises right after these events. Waterborne diseases, cholera, typhoid, dengue fever, they proliferate rapidly in flood-affected areas where water sources get contaminated. Heat-related illnesses, particularly severe heat stroke, become rampant during those extreme heat waves. They claim lives, overwhelm emergency rooms, and in densely populated urban centers like Karachi, which often struggle with poor air quality anyway, respiratory issues from air pollution and smog, they get severely exacerbated. It creates this year-round health burden that just wears down the population.
And that creates a compounding effect on an already stretched public health system. Doctors, hospitals, they're overwhelmed. Medical supplies become scarce. The sheer volume of cases, from infectious diseases to heat emergencies to trauma, it strains resources that are normally allocated for routine healthcare. It's literally a crisis layered on top of a crisis, diverting critical medical attention and resources away from other urgent health needs.
And the ultimate human cost, tragically, is the loss of life. Direct fatalities resulting from floods, from heat waves, from related incidents like building collapses, electrocutions, drowning. Each number represents a person, a unique life, a family torn apart, leaving behind unimaginable grief and a permanent void.
And what's often overlooked, but is critically important, is the disproportionate impact on already vulnerable communities. Women, children, the elderly, persons with disabilities, low-income populations, they are consistently the hardest hit. They simply have fewer resources to prepare for disasters. They often have limited access to information or safe evacuation routes and significantly fewer means to recover afterwards. Existing socioeconomic disparities aren't just highlighted by climate disasters, they are actively widened and entrenched. Women, for example, often bear the brunt of managing households, caring for the sick and elderly in incredibly challenging conditions. Children lose out on critical education, face long-term psychological trauma that can affect them for years to come.
Moving to the economic burden. The numbers here are truly staggering, hitting the very backbone of Pakistan's economy. The agricultural losses alone are just immense. We're talking billions lost in destroyed crops, livestock. The 2022 floods alone, as we mentioned, caused an estimated $30 billion in damages and economic losses. Agriculture accounted for a huge chunk of that. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 10% of Pakistan's entire GDP, wiped out in a single event.
What's sobering here is, well, how these climate events become a perpetual fiscal drag. They continually set back economic progress. When the agricultural sector, employing nearly 40% of the labor force, vital for food security and exports when it's crippled, it doesn't just impact farmers. It has cascading effects across the entire supply chain. It leads to severe food inflation, reduced exports, widespread unemployment. It's a fundamental blow to the nation's productive capacity. It makes it incredibly difficult to achieve sustainable economic growth or even attract much-needed foreign investment when you're constantly dealing with these shocks.
Then there's the extensive infrastructure damage. Roads, bridges, homes, public utilities, they're not just damaged, often completely destroyed. This necessitates massive, incredibly costly reconstruction and rehabilitation efforts. It diverts precious national resources that could otherwise be used for development, for progress.
And the cost of rebuilding goes far beyond just the immediate repair job. It involves redesigning infrastructure to be more climate resilient, which is often more expensive upfront, yes, but absolutely essential for future protection. Moreover, funds are inevitably diverted from crucial development projects, education, healthcare, industrial growth, towards disaster relief and rehabilitation. It creates this perpetual cycle where the country is always catching up, always rebuilding, impacting its long-term growth trajectory, its ability to invest in a better future for its citizens.
Which leads directly to a significant drain on the national budget. Funds that could be building new schools, upgrading hospitals, investing in new industries. Instead, they're funneled into emergency response and rebuilding. It's a constant reprioritization that puts immense stress on national finances.
And this persistent drain on the budget has a profound impact on worsening poverty and inequality. When livelihoods are destroyed and the government's capacity to invest in social safety nets or development is curtailed, well, more people get pushed below the poverty line. Those who are already struggling find themselves in even more precarious situations. It exacerbates existing socioeconomic disparities, making social mobility even more challenging for millions.
Even the tourism sector, a potential source of revenue and economic growth for Pakistan, feels the negative impact. Pakistan has incredible natural attractions, the majestic northern mountains, the coastline, but environmental degradation due to climate change directly affects their appeal. It hits a potential revenue source that could otherwise contribute significantly to economic recovery.
And beyond the tangible economic and humanitarian costs, there's a deep, often unseen strain on the social fabric of the nation. We observe increased migration from climate-affected rural areas, where livelihoods become untenable, towards already overcrowded urban centers. This puts immense pressure on urban resources, infrastructure. It leads to new challenges like informal settlements, increased competition for basic services. There's also the breakdown of established social structures within communities. People are displaced, traditional bonds weaken, community networks get disrupted. And perhaps less visible, but equally devastating, is the pervasive psychological trauma experienced by survivors. The loss, the fear, the uncertainty, the repeated cycles of displacement. It can have long-lasting effects on mental health and overall societal well-being for generations.
Okay. Given this alarming reality, these immense costs we've just explored, The crucial question then becomes, what is being done? What are the national efforts? What international support is available to respond to this crisis? And importantly, build resilience.
It's crucial to acknowledge the concrete steps being taken. Even while recognizing the immense scale and complexity of the challenge, things are happening. These efforts are varied, encompassing both governmental initiatives and vital international partnerships.
So on the national front, we have the National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, and its provincial counterparts, the PDMAs. Their role seems absolutely critical in disaster preparedness and response. What does that actually look like on the ground?
Well, these authorities are tasked with a broad mandate: developing comprehensive disaster risk reduction strategies, coordinating emergency relief operations, managing rehabilitation efforts post-disaster. They're often the first responders on the ground. Mobilizing resources and aid, setting up relief camps, providing immediate assistance. Now, their capacity has grown significantly over the years, but the sheer scale of recent disasters has tested them to their absolute limits. It highlights the urgent need for even more robust, well-funded, and decentralized systems, particularly right down at the district level. These national efforts, they're crucial first steps, absolutely. But they face significant hurdles: consistent funding, robust infrastructure across all provinces, seamless interprovincial coordination. These are ongoing challenges.
The government has also launched broader initiatives like the Green Pakistan Initiative. This seems to aim at addressing environmental challenges more directly, signaling a commitment beyond just disaster response, right?
Yes, the Green Pakistan Initiative and others like the 10 billion tree tsunami, they have a broad and ambitious focus. It's not just about planting trees, although reforestation is a significant visible component. It aims to increase forest cover, combat desertification, but it also emphasizes promoting renewable energy sources, trying to reduce our carbon footprint, and crucially, building climate-resilient infrastructure. This means designing roads, bridges, housing, public utilities that can better withstand extreme weather events like floods and heat waves. That's a long-term, capital-intensive, but absolutely essential endeavor.
And on a policy level, the government has formally recognized the issue. There's a dedicated climate change ministry, established policy frameworks. This shows commitment, at least on paper, to integrate climate action into national planning.
The existence of a dedicated ministry, detailed policy frameworks, it signifies a strategic intent, an intent to integrate climate action into core national planning and governance. However, the effectiveness of these policies often depends heavily on their actual implementation on the ground. And that can be hampered by, well, bureaucratic hurdles, interprovincial coordination issues, and the challenge of maintaining consistent political priority amidst other pressing national issues.
There are also ongoing efforts to improve early warning systems. These seem absolutely vital for minimizing losses when extreme weather hits. How far have these systems come, and what more is needed there?
These systems are literal lifesavers, improving forecasting for floods, heat waves, other extreme events, coupled with effective communication channels to get warnings out to vulnerable communities in a timely, accessible way. It can significantly reduce fatalities and economic damage. This involves investing in advanced meteorological equipment, leveraging satellite imagery, developing robust communication networks, often right down at the local level. We need to ensure warnings reach everyone, especially in remote, underserved areas. And importantly, the people understand what actions to take. We've seen progress, definitely, but there's still a significant gap in terms of reach and sophistication compared to, say, developed nations.
Now let's talk about international support and this crucial, often contentious concept of loss and damage. Here's where it gets really interesting, touching on that global responsibility aspect we mentioned earlier.
This is absolutely a pivotal aspect of the global climate conversation. It reflects that deeper issue of climate justice. Pakistan, as a highly vulnerable nation that has contributed negligibly to the problem, relies heavily on international aid for relief and rehabilitation. UN agencies, the World Bank, the IMF, various bilateral partners, they provide crucial assistance for immediate disaster response and longer-term recovery projects. This aid is vital, no question, but it's often reactive and frankly insufficient for the scale of the ongoing crisis.
But the real debate, the one Pakistan is strongly advocating for internationally, is around climate finance, specifically this concept of loss and damage funding. What does that actually mean for our listener? Break it down for us.
Okay, so this concept acknowledges that developed nations historically the largest emitters of greenhouse gases, the primary drivers of climate change. They bear a significant moral and financial responsibility for the crisis that disproportionately affects developing countries like Pakistan. Think of loss and damage like this. If rising sea levels permanently submerge a historic coastal town, well, that's a loss that adaptation, like building seawalls, couldn't prevent. It's gone. Or if a stupor flood destroys an entire season's crops beyond recovery, that's economic damage that adaptation measures couldn't mitigate. It's about accountability for the irreversible, unadaptable impacts, especially when the affected nations contributed minimally to the problem in the first place. Pakistan has been a very vocal champion for this fund, pushing for its establishment, its adequate capitalization in international climate forums, arguing passionately that it's a matter of equity and justice. It's essentially a call for climate reparations for the most impacted.
And Pakistan has also leveraged its diplomatic role strategically, hasn't it? Including during its UN Security Council presidency, to highlight climate change as a critical security issue, showing its global advocacy goes beyond just the financial aspect.
Yes, framing climate change as a security issue elevates its urgency on the global agenda. Pakistan has argued, quite compellingly, that climate impacts severe resource scarcity, mass displacement, profound economic instability. These can exacerbate existing conflicts. They can even create entirely new ones, both within and across borders. This makes it a direct matter of international peace and security. It demands a concerted, immediate global response. This diplomatic push aims to garner broader support, broader commitment from the international community for not just climate action, but truly transformative climate finance and justice.
Despite all these significant efforts, though, national and international, there are persistent challenges. They continue to hinder progress, slow down the pace of change.
When we talk about bureaucratic hurdles, what does that actually look like on the ground? Are we talking delays in aid reaching communities, slow-moving infrastructure projects?
It's unfortunately both, and often more. The red tape can be a real impediment. It causes agonizing delays in getting aid to those who need it most in times of crisis. And critically, it stalls long-term projects designed to build resilience. We've seen instances where international funds get caught in layers of approval for months, even years, delaying critical relief. Or where projects designed to build long-term climate-resilient infrastructure are stalled for years due to, interministerial coordination issues or frequent changes in leadership and policy direction. Furthermore, persistent funding gaps remain a major challenge. International pledges are made, yes, but the actual amount of climate finance flowing to vulnerable nations often falls far short of the immense needs for adaptation, mitigation, and recovery. And political instability in the country. That can really hinder long-term planning, can it? Making it incredibly difficult to implement consistent, multi-year climate strategies that require sustained commitment.
Indeed. Climate action requires sustained commitment over decades. That's challenging, even for stable governments. Frequent changes in government, periods of political crises, they can unfortunately derail initiatives, divert critical attention and resources, and lead to a detrimental lack of continuity in policy implementation. Moreover, varying levels of public awareness and participation across different regions also present a significant challenge. While the impacts are increasingly evident, a deeper, more widespread understanding of climate science and the importance of individual and community-level action, well, it's still needed for widespread behavioral change and consistent public support for critical policies. It's a complex interplay of governance, finance, and public engagement.
After understanding this alarming reality, the immense costs, the current responses, the crucial question becomes, what are the concrete pathways to a truly resilient future for Pakistan? What specific steps can actually move us from this position of vulnerability towards long-term resilience?
This is where we shift, right? From diagnosing the problem to actively exploring the solutions. And while the challenges are immense, sometimes they seem overwhelming. So too is the capacity for human ingenuity, strategic planning, collective cooperation. There is a path forward. It just requires bold, integrated action.
One of the most vital pathways seems to be investing heavily in robust adaptation strategies, fundamentally changing how we build and manage our environment, specifically building climate-resilient infrastructure. We're talking vastly improved flood defenses, reinforced embankments, modern smart drainage systems, and advanced water management systems, efficient irrigation, rainwater harvesting, maybe even desalination in coastal areas.
Absolutely critical. And these are just minor tweaks to existing systems. They represent a fundamental strategic shift in how we build and manage our resources. What's fascinating here, I think, is how this also involves developing things like heat-resistant crops and livestock breeds. This is vital to safeguard our agricultural output, to ensure our food supply can withstand the extreme temperatures, the altered rainfall patterns we're increasingly seeing. This directly protects farmers' livelihoods, prevents massive crop losses, and crucially, ensures national food security for a growing population. It's about adapting our very food system to a changing climate.
Another key pathway, one with huge long-term benefits, is the transition to renewable energy. This seems imperative for Pakistan, not just to reduce reliance on fossil fuels, which contribute to global emissions and our import bill, but also to build greater energy security and independence.
This transition means actively promoting and investing in cleaner indigenous energy sources. Solar, wind, hydropower. We have potential there. The dual benefit is profound. Not only does it help reduce Pakistan's contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions, aligning us with international climate goals, but it also creates a more diverse, stable, and potentially more affordable energy mix. It reduces our dependence on volatile international fossil fuel markets. It could lower energy costs for consumers and industries in the long run, and it creates new green jobs. It's truly an investment in a sustainable energy future that benefits both the environment and the economy.
Nature-based solutions also offer immense potential, don't they? Providing powerful, often cost-effective ways to enhance our resilience. We need to highlight the importance of ecological approaches, large-scale reforestation, protecting our existing natural ecosystems.
Yes, reforestation and afforestation, like the ambitious 10 billion tree tsunami, are powerful tools. Trees absorb carbon dioxide, essential for mitigation. But they also do so much more. They reduce soil erosion, stabilize land, help regulate local temperatures, act as natural barriers against flash floods. Beyond trees, wetland restoration, protecting natural ecosystems like mangroves along our coastlines, that's crucial. Wetlands act as natural sponges, absorbing excess floodwaters, recharging groundwater. Protecting these natural buffers provides vital climate resilience benefits, often at a lower cost than purely engineered solutions. Plus, it enhances biodiversity, supports local ecosystems. It's really a win-win.
Community-based adaptation is another critical element you mentioned, empowering local communities directly, giving them the knowledge, the resources to implement their own climate resilience strategies tailored to their specific needs.
This approach recognizes something vital. Local communities are often the first to experience climate impacts, and crucially, they possess unique traditional knowledge about their environment, their local conditions, providing them with resources, maybe drought-resistant seeds, training on early warning systems, support for building climate-resilient homes, even microfinance for climate-smart livelihoods. It ensures solutions are tailored to local contexts, that they're sustainable in the long term. It fosters ownership, self-reliance, it builds resilience from the ground up. It recognizes that grassroots action is incredibly powerful.
And specifically for cities like Karachi, which bear this immense brunt of urban flooding and extreme heat, urban planning for climate extremes seems paramount. So what does this all mean for a megacity like Karachi, with its unique challenges, its vast population?
For a sprawling, densely populated megacity like Karachi, it means a complete, urgent rethinking of urban design and infrastructure. No small task. This includes significantly improving, modernizing drainage systems to handle those increasingly intense monsoon rains, implementing widespread urban green spaces, parks, tree-lined avenues, green roofs to combat the urban heat island effect, provide natural cooling, designing buildings and infrastructure that are inherently resilient to both prolonged heat waves and intense flooding. It requires a holistic approach to city planning, integrating climate risks into every single decision. Zoning laws, building codes, transport networks, waste management, ensuring all future development is inherently more resilient and sustainable for its millions of inhabitants. Education and awareness are also absolutely critical, you stressed. We need widespread public education and awareness campaigns to truly shift behavior, to garner support for the scale of action required. These campaigns are crucial, not just for raising general awareness, but for fostering tangible behavioral change. At the individual level, the community level, conserving water, reducing waste, understanding safe practices during extreme weather. When the public truly understands the science, the risks, and critically the potential solutions and their own role in them, they are more likely to advocate for, demand, and participate in resilience efforts. This creates a stronger mandate for government action. It fosters a culture of collective responsibility towards a climate-resilient future.
And finally, continued advocacy for climate justice remains incredibly important. Pakistan must continue to push for greater international responsibility, greater finance for climate impacts, ensuring the global community recognizes its moral and financial obligations.
This means maintaining a strong, unified voice on the global stage. Urging developed nations to fulfill their climate finance commitments that $100 billion per year pledge is a critical starting point, but likely not enough. And to actively support and capitalize the Loss and Damage Fund. It's about ensuring the burden of climate change is shared equitably, recognizing historical emissions, making sure those most affected, despite contributing the least, receive the necessary support to adapt, rebuild, and genuinely thrive. Pakistan's continued diplomatic efforts are vital in shaping this global conversation and pushing for a more just climate future.
Well, this deep dive has certainly laid bare the gravity of the climate crisis here in Pakistan. From the scorching heat waves impacting daily life to the devastating floods claiming lives and livelihoods, the immense costs, human, economic, social, that we're already bearing. The challenge is undeniable. It's urgent. It demands our full attention. But as we've discussed, while the situation is severe, it's complex. There is agency, there is hope. And collective action, informed by understanding, driven by determination, truly can make a profound difference.
There's always more to learn, isn't there? And while the challenges are immense, so too is the capacity for human ingenuity and cooperation. Understanding the problem in its full, sobering reality, that's the essential first step. But engaging with the solutions, advocating for meaningful change, building resilience at every single level, from individual choices in our homes to community-led initiatives to national policy, international forums, that's where the true path forward lies. The future of Pakistan, and indeed the planet, really hinges on these efforts.
And for you, our listener, we want to leave you with a thought, a question for your own reflection, perhaps. What are your observations on climate change in your community? What specific changes have you personally witnessed in your daily life, your local environment, that maybe resonate with what we've discussed today?
And this raises an important question for you, our listener, to consider. How do your local personal experiences connect to this broader national and global challenge? And thinking about the pathways to resilience we've outlined, what do you believe are the most urgent, the most impactful steps Pakistan needs to take right now to build a safer, more sustainable future for all its citizens? We encourage you to reflect deeply on these questions. Consider how your own insights, maybe even your own actions, can contribute to this vital conversation and this collective effort.